So they're looking at minimum wage boosts happening in New York and California. They're specifically looking at the one from California, and you're getting your typical reaction to it, right? So I'm asking, what would the minimum wage now if it had been indexed to inflation in 1965? And was there mass unemployment in the 60s? Prices are not set by some physical law that entitles the capitalist class to a specific cut. We have some monopolies like bananas and gas, but broadly speaking, they're set by market forces. They will charge you what you're willing to pay, and if you won't pay what they're charging, the prices will have to come down. So you can't work this out using some simplistic linear model. Producers will take any opportunity they can to maximize profits, sure, but it's up to you whether you want to pay for it or not. It's up to business owners to set a fair profit margin too. Some people will get greedy, and they won't be able to compete. So sad. Somebody answers my question, which was half rhetorical. They say that it would be about $25 an hour. Workers in the USA are being screwed big time. I knew it was around $20 an hour. I wasn't sure exactly what it was. I think everybody knows that it should be about $20 an hour. So I responded, the system is reacting to some activism. That's a positive step. I mean, it's been a few decades since the union movement collapsed. There's a vacuum there on both sides of the class divide, but you need to be careful in preventing the system from turning it into a wedge issue like gay marriage or abortion rights. You can imagine this nightmare scenario where the Democrats dangle 25% per year increases as a foil to scaremongering over the Republicans turning it back by 10 years. In 2014, the Liberal Party up in Ontario and Canada just out of the blue took the best position you can on the issue. There wasn't even any activist pressure. The pressure rather seems to have come from the party's economic advisors, who decided that the government needed to take steps to stimulate the spending amongst low-income workers. There's also talk about it eliminating uncertainty for business owners, but it was primarily a stimulus policy that came out of think tanks. This is what they did. One, they boosted the minimum wage to its highest level historically relative to inflation, which in Ontario was not very high. It was only about $12. Actually, sorry, it was about $11. But you have to keep in mind that there's big differences in the cost of living, et cetera, right? And the second thing they did was they tied it to the CPI to be recalculated on a yearly basis. So if there's 2% inflation in Ontario over 2016, and then the minimum wage for 2017 will increase by 2%. That means workers aren't losing out. A big part of that was actually because they wanted to stimulate the economy. They thought that people weren't making enough money. If you give people more money, they'll spend more. I'm not sure that really works out, to be honest with you, but it's good thinking anyways. And the other reason was because business owners were complaining that they just didn't know how to plan around what the minimum wage would be. If they set it so that it's a certain amount every year, then they know exactly what it is, they can budget it, they can plan it, they understand it, right? But I mean, from the perspective of somebody that might be working somewhere around minimum wage, the big thing is that you're not losing to inflation, right? Because every year things go up, right? If the cost of things go up every year, then your wages should go up every year as well, right? Otherwise, you're just struggling not to lose money. And every time you get a wage, every time you get a wage increase, like every time you get a raise, raise was the word I was looking for. So every time you get a raise, you're just struggling to catch what it is that you lost, right? This fixes that. It's not permanent. I mean, you may still see a bump right here and there, but the idea is to make it so everybody understands what's happening, and to provide a disincentive to just crank it, right? If business owners reacted to, and I think maybe the bigger issue is if rentiers reacted to increases in the minimum wage by just increasing the price of everything, well then the increase in the minimum wage wouldn't be an increase in the minimum wage, it would just be a handout to the rentier class. And the Liberals in Canada are a little bit different. They hold a little bit closer to the ideological basis of liberalism, and they don't like rentier classes, right? So that's a part of it as well. But the reason I'm doing this Reacts at the moment is more to try to put it in context with the election. Why would California do this right now? Well, it's very simple. Because it takes the issue away from Bernie Sanders, right? New York was doing it before, right? But why now? Why is California doing it right now? Well, San Francisco was doing it already. And it was a question of, it's a ballot issue, right? It gets young people out to vote, or just low-wage people out to vote. They're going to vote for city councilors. They're going to push their ideas through. They're going to pull the whole Senate to the left. When you get a ballot issue like this that's popular, it can really cause some damage from the perspective of somebody like a Jerry Brown, right? So that's what you do. Is you say, all right, well, we're doing it, and the hope is that it's going to keep turnout down when the primary hits on June 7th, right? So that's what that is in California. That is a tactic to try and cut into Bernie Sanders' support level. I'm not sure it's going to work, but it's a good try anyways, right? It may be the case that if you line up issue after issue, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get what Bernie's, pushing for in California, anyways, right? So what are the issues that are important in California? Well, there's the minimum wage, maybe marijuana legalization, and then there's a long list of stuff that already exists, right? It's going to be mostly social issues and attempts to. With the class divide, you've got either people that want more tax fairness or people that want to reduce taxes. Even Democrats will want to reduce taxes when you're talking about California, right? Because it's one of those situations where you've got the parties dominant in the state, so it takes over a wide swath of ideological territory that really belongs to the right. It's how the Democrats have gotten to the mess that they're in, is they become dominant somewhere. They become dominant. New York's the same thing, and they attract all of these people that are really Republicans, and it's misleading, right? So because you look at the polls, the poll results or the voting results or whatever, and it says they won 60% of the vote, but the only reason why they won 60% of the vote is because they managed to pull the 20% of the middle that would normally lean towards the right. And the reason they were able to do that is because they ran somebody that was smack in the center, right? But California is kind of it's an iffy proposition, right? If you can get turnout up, like everywhere else, if you can get turnout up, you can win. But in California and in New York too, he's fighting against an upper class, a really entrenched Democratic-based upper class, right? And this is it's a smart tactic. It might not work completely, but it might work enough, right? If you take away issue after issue away from Bernie, then what is he using to build it all up? So that's the truth of it, right? That's what's going on there with that, and we'll see what kind of an effect it has in the polls in the long run. There is an argument that if they get their $15 an hour minimum wage, then it could keep enough of the people away from the polls to let Clinton win. There's still the tuition thing though. That's the other driver for the young people, and just the fact that broad spectrum scenarios, or just sort of a broad spectrum way. If you're at all left of center, there's a lot of reasons why you just are not going to like Hillary, right? But I mean, it's not the same thing as a real puller. The $15 an hour minimum wage will pull people that might not normally have voted, right? So what else can he come up with to replace that in California? Um, and I really think that's probably the right way for him to be thinking. They took this away from us. What else can we put on the table, right? What else? What other thing can we do to try to get these people out to vote, right? Besides all the other things, but what other what can we replace it with there in that specific place, particularly? I don't know. That's up to them to figure out. But this is it's clearly political manipulation more so than anything else. And they went over that. I mean, if you look at it, the details are pretty. It's like it'll be $15 an hour, after inflation eats into it, kind of thing, right? So, anyways, that's that.